Greetings and welcome to our daily walk with Scripture for February the 6th. Your readings today came at the finishing up Exodus chapter 23, reading all of Exodus chapter 4 and 25, wrapping up Matthew chapter 24, talking through the first part of Psalm 30, and also Proverbs 7, 24 through 27. Now, we're going to hit Matthew chapter 24 today because this is one of those passages where you can read it and actually get really easily confused. And I remember when I was a young man reading this, at that times I'm like, wait a minute, time out. What did I just read? And here's what it is, okay? Verse 36 of Matthew chapter 24. But about that day or hour, and I remember this is the Olivet Discourse. This is kind of talking about the end of the world, what's going to look like at the end of days. Jesus gets a lot of parallels and talks about stuff from Daniel, kind of confirming Daniel's vision. All right, so then he's talked about these things, but now verse 36. But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Okay, that's the sentence right there. You're like, wait a minute. I thought Jesus is God. If Jesus is God, why doesn't Jesus know the day or the hour? I mean, he's God. He's supposed to know everything, right? So how can Jesus actually be God? And this is actually one of the verses that some people have used to say that Jesus never says he's God. That Jesus is he's not really God. Well, here's the good news. We're going to actually debunk that argument here in a few days as we get further down into Matthew. And he talks in front of the Sanhedrin. But in this case, you look at this and you go, how does this work exactly? If nobody knows, and if Jesus is supposed to be God, this is just as this saying that Jesus isn't God. Well, for that, we're going to have to skip into a book that we haven't read and won't read actually for a while later down this year. But that is Philippians 2. And in Philippians 2, in chapter 2, is a famous song. And this is a hymnal. We think it's a hymn because of the way that it was written. Okay, but starting in verse 6 and 7 of Philippians chapter 2, who, being in very nature God, this is talking about Jesus, by the way. The previous verse, he said, Paul told us to have the same mindset as Jesus, who, being in the very nature God, this is the important part, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, okay? Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. This little song right here really answers a lot of the questions that we have when it comes to how does Jesus do this? Because Jesus is, to be clear, fully God and fully man at the same time. However, according to those verses in Philippians, we know that Jesus chose to humble himself and chose not to access the fully God aspects of himself at times. Jesus did not use his full power. He did not use his full omnipotence, omnipresence, and all those things. We know this because Jesus was a man. He was right there. And so he wasn't omnipresent when he was in the human form of Jesus here on earth. However, he still was fully God. This is how Jesus was able to know the hearts of other people. This is when Satan takes Jesus up to the temple, as we read earlier. He talks about how, if you throw yourself down, they will save you and rescue you and all those different things. This is because Satan recognized that Jesus was not accessing everything. As it says in Philippians, he humbled himself. He chose to make himself nothing, being made in human likeness. And as a result of that, so when Jesus says in verse 36, not even the Son knows, this is Jesus saying that I'm not accessing that part of me at this point. I am choosing to be here because I need to go to the point of death, and I need to sacrifice myself on the point of death, and that's the fully human side of it. And so then Jesus goes on and he talks about the end times, and he talks about what people have interpreted as the rapture. And so then your next question might be, well, Jeremy, is it talking about the rapture? Well, it depends on who you ask. For me, I have personal beliefs on it that I'm not going to share quite yet. Well, we'll talk about those at another time. But here's the thing that you need to know. This is the important part of it, and we'll emphasize this time and time again. it doesn't really matter whether or not there is a rapture or when the rapture happens and those kind of things. What matters is that Jesus will return. And he will bodily return. And he will come and he will claim all of his servants home to live in eternity together. That is the important part. These other details we can wrestle with and we can debate and we can talk about. But ultimately what matters is that Jesus is coming back. That day or hour is coming. We need to be prepared. We need to be making sure that we are making the choices that honor God and honor Jesus. Okay, that's it for today. Have a blessed one. We'll talk next time.